FEMA, TRAPS, and Tropical Storm Arthur. The disaster after the disaster. Tropical Storm Arthur wasn't a hurricane. Let that sink in. It wasn't a Category 1. It wasn't a Category 3. It wasn't a Category 5. Yet, homes flooded, families were evacuated, water rescues were conducted, tornadoes touched down, and thousands of homeowners are now beginning the recovery process. But here's the question nobody is asking. What happens after the flood? Because for many homeowners, the flood itself may not be the hardest part. The insurance claim might be. And before this episode is over, I'm going to show you why some flood victims discover the real disaster begins after the water is gone. Welcome back to the NAPAICC Insider. I'm Scott Harris, former insurance adjuster, licensed public adjuster, and CEO of NAPAICC. We represent policyholders, not insurance companies. Today we're talking about Tropical Storm Arthur, not from a weather perspective, not from a political perspective, but from the homeowner's perspective. Because once the cameras leave, once the floodwaters recede, and once the headlines move on, thousands of homeowners are left facing a challenge most never expected: the FEMA flood insurance system. If you're a homeowner anywhere in America, take a second and hit subscribe. Because Arthur is not just a Louisiana story. It's not just a Mississippi story. It's a lesson every homeowner should understand before the next storm arrives. Let's start with a simple question. What exactly did homeowners buy when they purchased flood insurance? Most people think they bought an insurance policy. Technically, they did. But they also entered a federal administrative system with different rules, different deadlines, different procedures, and different limitations than most private insurance products. And that's where the FEMA trap begins. Two homeowners can live on the same street. One suffers a plumbing loss. One suffers flood damage. Both homes are devastated. Both families need help. Both paid premiums. Yet they may find themselves operating under entirely different systems, different rules, different procedures, different expectations, and potentially different outcomes. Most homeowners don't know that, not because they're uninformed, because nobody tells them. Nobody explains it when they're buying the policy. Nobody explains it at renewal. Nobody explains it until the flood arrives, and that's a problem, because the flood is often only the first challenge. The claim process becomes the second. Now, before anybody misunderstands me, flood insurance is absolutely necessary. Tropical Storm Arthur proved that. Homes flooded, roads disappeared underwater, entire communities were impacted. The question isn't whether flood insurance is necessary. The question is whether homeowners fully understand the system they're entering. Because documentation matters, deadlines matter, communication matters, and mistakes can become expensive. In a moment, I'm going to show you the single biggest misconception homeowners have about flood insurance and why it catches people by surprise every year. But first, let me ask you something. Do you currently carry flood insurance? Leave a comment below. And if you do you know your building coverage limit and your contents coverage limit? Most homeowners don't. And that's exactly where the next problem begins. Many homeowners assume flood insurance will make them whole. Sometimes it doesn't. Reconstruction costs have exploded. Material prices have increased. Labor costs have increased. Contractors are often overwhelmed after major disasters. Yet many policyholders still assume their coverage will fully restore them after a catastrophic loss. Sometimes the math doesn't work that way, and that's when expectations collide with reality. Now here's the most controversial part of this conversation. Why do flood victims often feel like they have fewer protections than other insurance consumers? Think about it. Two families suffer catastrophic losses, one from a plumbing leak, one from a flood. Both paid premiums. Both need help. Both need their homes repaired. Yet they may find themselves navigating very different claims environments. That's not a political question. That's an accountability question. And it's one worth asking. Because homeowners dealing with catastrophe shouldn't have to become insurance experts overnight. Yet that's exactly what often happens. The real FEMA trap isn't just paperwork. It isn't just deadlines. It isn't just documentation requirements. The real FEMA trap is expectation. Homeowners think they purchased one thing, then discover they're operating inside something very different. They expected insurance. They entered a federal claim system. They expected recovery. They found procedure. They found complexity. And unfortunately, many discover those differences after the flood has already happened. What happened during Tropical Storm Arthur should concern every homeowner in Florida, every homeowner in Texas, every homeowner in Georgia, every homeowner in the Carolinas, and every homeowner living in a flood-prone area. Because Arthur was the first named storm of the season. The first. Not September, not October, not peak hurricane season. The first. And already we're talking about flooding, tornadoes, water rescues, property damage, and recovery challenges. If this is how the season starts, every homeowner should be paying attention. Tropical Storm Arthur will eventually disappear from the weather maps. The headlines will move on, the cameras will leave, but thousands of homeowners will still be dealing with inspections, estimates, documentation, coverage questions, claims, and recovery. If you found value in this discussion, help us reach more homeowners. Hit the like button, subscribe to the NAPAICC Insider, share this episode with friends, family, contractors, insurance professionals, public adjusters, and homeowners. The more educated homeowners become before a loss, the better decisions they make after one. And leave a comment below. Do you think flood insurance should operate more like traditional homeowners insurance? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, the storm determines the damage. The documentation determines the recovery. I'm Scott Harris, and we'll see you in the next episode.